Hey everybody. Um, Little different message tonight. As you see, I got freshened up, shaved, and haircut. Look good for church tomorrow. And got to do those things for self care. Things that make you feel better about yourself and your appearance. You know, put some pride in yourself because if you don't give yourself any pride or respect or even motivation, nobody else will do it for you. I mean, you might be blessed to have a couple people in your life, but know that if you do, that is a blessing. Um, Not everybody gets a cheering squad, you know. Sometimes you got to do it for yourself. Sometimes you got to be the one to pick yourself up out of the mud. God will be there to give you the strength, but everyone else is gone. I'm used to living that way, actually. I think that's why I'm able to heal so fast, is because I'm used to, I've been pretty much on my own my entire life, only because nobody can relate to me, or very few people understand me, like even since childhood. I was seeing a therapist when I was younger, for ADHD and learning control and all that. Um, Nobody ever quite, got it. And again, I have that problem of I have so ingrained myself to dumb myself down around others because people get very uncomfortable around intelligence. Um, it usually puts people on high alert because again, we live in a society where it's always I got to get you before you get me. So if somebody seems like they're the smartest one in the room, that's also the most suspicious one in the room. And that's just an unfortunate truth of the world we live in now. And it's but I got to quit shrinking myself. That was the whole thing with ending this relationship, was I was losing myself to keep something alive in a one-sided effort, and it just was not worth the cost that it was taken out of me. It wasn't doing it. And that's why I finally had to walk away. Same with a lot of these friendships. You know, I was talking about it yesterday. Pay attention to who's there when you need people and who doesn't show up when you do. And then decide where people belong in your life. If you got people that are never there when you're in a hard spot, don't associate with them anymore. And you ain't got to make some grand speech about it. I mean, be honest if they ask, but quit over explaining to people. I used to explain to people, so they can understand and process it and be like, hey, this boundary is up or this change is occurring because this is the behavior I'm getting from you and you're not changing it. So this is what I have to do and live. So I explain that how people don't care. They don't care. Because if they were going to change it, you wouldn't have to explain it to them. They would have figured it out by now. So don't give them your words. Don't waste your breath. There's some nasty people in the world and they just refuse to change. Not that they can't change, they just refuse to do it. And now is not the time to deal with those people. We'll have to get to them eventually, but now is not the time. Now's the time to find our soul tribes and start our little communities amongst ourselves. And I am serious about that. Start getting your friend groups together. Know who's in your neighborhood that you can rely on, or find people that can benefit in a situation where you need to survive. And that doesn't mean use people, but find a way to be mutually beneficial. Figure out how you're gonna, if all of a sudden we lost power or we lost internet, have a plan. Because the reality is, one, our grid already is overloaded. It's only a matter of time before it gives up on us. Um, Secondly, if one of our enemies wanted to attack us, the easiest way would be to drop an EMP, shut down, electronics, and people would lose their minds. Everything would shut down, essentially. So, um, this isn't to be a negative Nancy and speak bad things into existence, but there's also a point of being prepared. And since that is the most logical and likely scenario to occur, and because there's multiple ways to make it happen, that would be one to again, don't worry about the future. Don't rack your brain about it and raise your anxiety. But that doesn't mean don't plan ahead either. Don't be prepared. You know, uh, you definitely want to be prepared for have certain fail safes, have certain plans, if this happens, where are we going to meet at? What are we going to do? What supplies do we need? What do we have here? What do we have to get from somewhere else? Things like that. I wish my ultimate goal, my dream that I see, is a world where we, as human beings, get back to humanity. We get back to community. We work together instead of working against each other. Like we have been for the last umpteen years here. Um, and I think too many people are used to the way they've been living this self-centered lifestyle, this got to look out for me attitude that everybody has. And it's not that we, again, like I was saying earlier, it's not that we can't outgrow it. It's that too many people are choosing not to. And it's only to your detriment. I mean, don't get me wrong. Yes, it does suck being aware because not everybody is. And that is an annoyance um, to see things that people just don't get, even though they're right in front of their face. It drives you nuts. When you see people divided that should be working together, they have every reason to work together and only one reason to be at odds, but they choose to be at odds for that one reason. It just, and people allow it, they accept it. You know, all the problems going on in the world, and we just sit back and we let it happen. Like, well, nothing we can do about it. Let our leaders do what they're going to do. No, there's a point where we got to take, responsibility for the world we're living in. It's what we allow is what happens. I just learned the hard way, like very harsh lesson. I don't think I'm ever going to lose that one because that was drilled in. But your life is not going to change if you don't change it. And sometimes, if you want a big change, you have to get rid of everything in your past entirely. You have to let it go. I've had a big problem lately. I've been struggling. There's something I've been needing to let go, and I haven't been able to do it because I don't want to. There was somebody I thought was going to be in my life forever, and turns out they were just a lesson. You know, Mind you, it was a long-term lesson, but in the end, it was just a lesson. And I need to let it go because the more I hang on to it, the more I'm blocking what I'm meant to have, what's supposed to be coming my way. But that's the issue. That's the problem. Is I know as soon as I let go, I really let go. Like everything else, I've let go. I don't want to talk to them anymore. I don't want to see them anymore. That much is already done. But once I let go of the anger that's still left, that's it. That's all I got left for them. And part of me wants to let that go to get rid of it, and another part doesn't want to because, again, it's hard to let go. But I need to. I really need to, and I am aware of it. It's hard. I had a lot of plans. And the crazy thing is just before this happened, I had the next, year and a half laid out. Like I laid it out to her, hey, I'm not sitting here not thinking about these things. Like I do have strategies. Like everybody thinks because I'm quiet. I remember my friends saying like, hey, you're just sitting here rotten. Like, no, that's all you see. You don't see or hear what's going on up here. Like my life dramatically changed when I had that first heart attack, and then when I had more heart attacks after, when they kept coming. Um, that drastically changed my life, and I had to make drastic changes to accommodate. And a lot of people, I don't think, realized the complete transformation that was required. And I did it. I became something else entirely because I know that the old way I was living, the old way I was operating, wasn't going to do it. I can't physically do the things that I used to do. But that doesn't count me out of the game entirely. But I have to work smarter, not harder. See, too many people are programmed like you got to do that grind, you got to kill yourself basically to survive, which is asinine. Like I don't understand how people cannot realize like that does not work. That is not sustainable. But yeah, that's what people fight for every day. Fight to maintain it. Blows my mind. Part of me misses the days of being an NPC when I didn't know better. Life was simpler then. But I will say I was very unhappy because then I didn't know. I knew something was wrong, I just didn't know what. And it bothered me. Now I know, I just, by myself, I can't do anything about it. That's part of the reason I do these. The more people we get working on this together, the more we can generate change. And it doesn't have to be some coup or rebellion or any of that crap. We can do this very calmly, very easily. And just say, enough is enough. And let's start doing things a better way. Because the way we're doing it now ain't working. Too many people are suffering. Too many people are getting crushed into the system. And again, we fight to maintain it instead of fighting to change it. And sometimes it bothers me. Like, I wonder, like, does humanity really deserve what's happening to it? Because they let themselves be duped and they do fight to maintain it? Keep the status quo going? Because they choose it. What you are not changing, you are choosing. Do people deserve to, like, should I shut up and let people keep going the way they are? I struggle with that very often. But I know that's the thing about accountability, and why so many people are allergic to it in this day and age, in this world right now. And it's your greatest asset because you can turn yourself into something better. You can become so much better. That's why when you're among friends and you try and hold each other accountable, it's, hey, I see better in you. I know you are better than that. And I need to draw your attention to that. As your friend, I need to keep you on your path. People don't do that anymore. People are, either completely self-absorbed and don't even deal with other people, or when they do deal with other people, again, it's to mistreat them or misuse them or get one over on them somehow. That is not how we're meant to operate. We are social creatures, human beings. We are meant to work together, to support one another, to, divvy everything up so it's not too much load on a handful of people. But we lost sight of that. We let them take that from us. Be mindful. That's, I haven't said my saying in a while, but I used to say it all the time. Be mindful, not fearful. Give grace, not grief. I even etched that in wood. And that's something I got to get back to. Be mindful, not fearful. means be aware. And when you're fearful, you're living by emotions and triggers. And you can't do that. God didn't give us a spirit of fear. He gave us a spirit of love and discernment. And discernment is what you use to navigate. That was my lesson. I didn't use it before, but I sure as shit am using it now. Not just anybody gets access to me anymore. I used to want to help and be a part of everybody, I used to say, no one left behind. Some people, if that's what they choose, then that's what they choose. All I can do is offer you the insight to grow and step forward. That's it. That's the best I can do. And it's up to you after that point. I can sit here and I can tell you guys the steps over, and I've been doing a lot of repetition. Some things I've taken a little deeper. I can do all that until I'm blue in the face. But if people aren't listening or willing to do the work, it's pointless. We're not going to get anywhere. So just something to think about. If you're unhappy with the way you're living your life right now, really think about why that is. And then think about how you can change it. But you can't change it until you understand the why. That's what you got to focus on. You got to understand what is wrong. Again, AA, I'm telling you, get a 12-step book. That's a great way to live your life in general. I'm telling you. Solid advice in there. Anyway, as usual, I went over time, but again, things to think about. Start paying more attention. Because if you don't, it's going to cost you your future. Everybody's worried about making, money, covering bills, and don't get me wrong, responsibility is important, but what about your responsibility to the future of, humanity, your children, your lineage? I think that's a bigger responsibility than just making a few bucks to, keep the lights going. But everybody wants to live small scale. Nobody looks big picture anymore. Again, we've all become so shallow. Nobody has depth. Nobody thinks below surface level. And it's frightening to see. That movie, and we know which movie I'm talking about, the I movie, it really is coming true. Like we're seeing it in real time come true. And nobody cares. That's crazy. That really is crazy. Anyway, keep taking care of yourself. Try and help take care of each other. I'll catch you in the next one.